There was an article written by Dr. Fauci, of whom we've spoken many times, Dr. Fauci, head of NIH, and really kind of driving and directing America's policy dealing with the threat of the coronavirus and COVID-19. Dr. Fauci published an article very recently in a magazine called Cell, C-E-L-L. And it was published along with Dr. David Morin's, and it's called Emerging Pandemic Diseases, How We Got to COVID-19. The reason I want to share that with you today is this. In this article, part of what Dr. Fauci talks about is, globally speaking, because we have so many more people living on Earth than we used to, that we have population growing, and we have, as described in this very lengthy scholarly article, we have more and more human interaction with natural elements of the planet, even though I would like to point out humans are also natural. We are part of the biology of the planet, but more and more human interaction, and therefore, he says, more likely to continue to have not just the coronavirus, but coronavirus, COVID-19, many other viruses, as he describes it, kind of natural reactions to the presence of humans, the growing presence of humans on Earth. He actually speaks of the idea that we, humankind, are entering into the pandemic era. And because of the pandemic era, which he is concerned about, he talks about the idea that we have to be deciding as human beings how we're going to live, how we're going to interact. Here's just one little clip from Dr. Fauci's article, which again you can read on our website, americacanwetalk.org. He says, SARS-CoV-2 is just the beginning. We're in a pandemic era. Now, friends, what is the solution? Live in greater harmony with nature. Living in greater harmony with nature will require changes in human behavior, as well as other radical changes that may take decades to achieve. Rebuilding the infrastructures of human existence. This is Fauci writing. Rebuilding the infrastructures of human existence, from cities to homes to workplaces to recreational and gathering venues, in a human-dominated world, which is, I think, intended to be a jab at people, in a human-dominated world in which our human activities represent aggressive, damaging, and unbalanced interactions with nature, we will increasingly provoke new disease emergence. We'll probably talk about this on another show. The reason I raise it today in the first 5 is this. Obviously, commentators reading this are expressing some concern because he sounds a lot like Greta Thunberg or other people extremely concerned about climate change. But my point in this show is this. How much freedom are we Americans, everyone in the world, but let's focus here in this show in America, how much freedom in America are we willing to concede, to surrender, because of what Dr. Fauci is saying? Right now, here we sit in September 2020, we began the reaction to the coronavirus in March of this year, where we were told we'd all just kind of shelter in place and stay home and stop normal life, that we need about 2 weeks to flatten the curve, which had to do at that time with the spread of the virus and the availability of ICU beds and other hospital and medical attention. We're long past that issue. We're not dealing with that. That isn't the curve we're talking about anymore. But we're still in a place where so much of American life is under regulation. In many places, including the great state of Texas where I am, under regulation of kinds relating to things like businesses, whether they can be open or not, how many people can be inside businesses, where you're allowed to stand, where you're allowed to go, whether you're allowed to have outdoor gatherings, whether you can have family weddings and funerals, how many people can be inside a church, depending on the place you live in this country. Massive, ongoing, not just, to say it nicely, regulation in order to prevent the spread of COVID. The way more people see it, including myself, is these are increasing infringements on the basic right in America to live in freedom. The idea that we have a right to live in freedom and that we don't surrender that right to the government. We have it guaranteed in our Constitution and in the very beginning of our country, in the Declaration of Independence, that each of us have rights from God, including life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. To temporarily suspend those because of some crisis, yes. But if coronavirus, now with not nearly the death rates that were predicted at the beginning, and coronavirus, where we're still here in September 2020, living a very limited, very regulated life, We're being told over and over whether or not it's safe to go places, whether or not we can have rallies, whether or not we can have concerts together. The Los Angeles mayor just announced there will be no trick-or-treating this year, so no Halloween, no fall sports, no football in person with normal activity in a gym or in a field, no football, no baseball, no basketball, no college sports. Nothing normal is allowed to go on. And this is just this one virus. This is COVID-19 right now. And that really is the question I want you to think about very seriously. If Dr. Fauci's prognostications in this publication are correct, and we're just entering the pandemic era, does that mean we're entering the era of ending freedom in America? That all freedom henceforth will be decided by Dr. Fauci or others in power in Washington because of the threat of a virus? Or, on the other hand, are the American people going to stand up and say, you know what, we have a right to live in freedom, and the immediate crisis, the need to flatten the curve to prevent a massive spread, which did not happen in America, are we in this country going to say we'll just stay home and frozen in place until we're told periodically by the government, by Dr. Fauci or others, that it's okay to go out of the house, it's okay to go to the store today, it's okay to stand next door to your neighbor, it's okay to hug your friends? I actually think there's a rising tide, and there should be, of people in America saying we're not going to surrender all of freedom in this country because of this virus, and even more so when you see Dr. Fauci saying we're talking about, as his term, the pandemic era we're entering, where everything is going to be regulated by those who think they have authority just because they want to stop the spread of disease, to tell you how much liberty you have. In America, that is not okay. And that, my very fine friends, is today's First Five.